Unfortunately, it's not always possible to identify shipwrecks. And this dive is another one where we went a long way offshore with really high hopes and ended up with basically nothing. On the plus side, conditions were fabulous and Rick took some stunning photos that I'll be showing through this video. You'll also see I've got this cool little overlay in the bottom left hand corner of my screen which shows the data from my dive computer. I know loads of you are going to love that, and I particularly want to thank Eric Stott, who has done all the work to make that happen. It's a brilliant piece of functionality. Thank you very much. This was another wreck that we dived out of Newquay in North Cornwall. It was on one of the Tampa weekends, although I think we were all a bit cheesed off at that time, so we decided to dive something that clearly couldn't be the Tampa. At 100 odd metres long, this wreck was far, far too big. Still really exciting though, because this is an unknown wreck. Nobody's ever dived this before. Chances are nobody ever will dive it, because the information that we've got about it, we've posted online onto wreck site, and so anybody would do their research, would look at it, realise it's upside down, and therefore probably go to one of the many other wrecks in the local area that are much more exciting. So could well be that we're the only people ever to dive this. Now you can see we're back on Atlantic Diver. That's Chris Lowe's boat out of Newquay. I've decided rather than going off the stern, I'm going out off the side, which is, if you're sitting on the forward-facing seats, is always a good idea. You can see there I've got my scooter just coming up alongside the lazy shot and the shot. Chris puts those two in together rather than getting one of the divers to do it, so it's a bit of a kind of just way that sometimes skippers do things a bit differently. Looking in there, you can see that the viz looks really good. You can see something yellow on the shot line already, so that's great. And there you go, I'm in the water, and the fact that you can see things that clearly underwater, in fact you can see it's the buoy there, that is just a really good sign for the dive. You know, if you know you're going to get in and you know the viz is going to be good, that just kind of makes it so much better right at the beginning. Once you're in the water, first thing you want to do, of course, is get yourself on the shot line. And you can see there, I've managed to wrap the rope of my scooter around the trigger, which is not ideal, but sorted it all out there. And you can see I'm going to start my descent. You might have noticed that the bag flapping around to my left-hand side, that is my Kindle. This dive is from May 2024, and at this point I was still using my Kindle for keep myself amused on deco stops. One of the things with Chris is that he doesn't like the Kindles being put in with the lazy shot, so you've got to take them down and attach them on yourself. So that is exactly what you're going to see me doing in a little bit. In front of me there, that is Rick. I'm sure everyone will recognise his yellow box. Unlike most of us, he doesn't dive an Inspiration. He dives an Evo Plus, which is the same size scrubber as an Inspiration, but it's only got the 2 litre cylinders on for oxygen and diluent, just kind of reduces the weight. And there you go, that loop in the lazy shot, that is where my Kindle has just gone on. And hopefully you're all starting to see the dive computer display on the left-hand side. You're also seeing the fact that you can see the depth profile in the middle as well. It's just a fantastic addition, and hopefully you're going to see more of these in my videos. One of the problems that you realise with this one is that the sample rate on this dive isn't particularly great, so that's why there's occasional mismatches between the depth on the dive computer and the depth on the Paralenz. What I do nowadays is I've changed the sample rate, so this won't be a problem for future dives, but for ones like this where I'm going back and using old data, then there is going to be this mismatch. Now, as I'm descending here, you can see that I'm turning on my GoPro. Now, for whatever reason, I don't have the GoPro footage from this dive. I don't know what happened to it. Either got lost in my filing system or it didn't record or something like that. This is one of the reasons that I carry loads of cameras now, because I've ended up losing so much dive footage over the years, or getting bits missed or whatever. Anyway, as you can see here, we've got a thick green layer on this dive. So this is May, so that's in and around the time of the plankton bloom. So in this particular dive, the plankton was, you probably saw there, between about 12 and 30 metres, 15 and 30 metres. But I've now popped through it, and you can see that the visibility is cleared up again. You get this quite a lot, this kind of layering with the plankton bloom. But often, as you can see here, once you get below it, you get really clear water and really good visibility. Now, Rick is in front of me there. He hasn't messed around. He'll be on his scooter as well. And both of us do exactly the same thing, which is that we scooter down, which gets us down as quickly as we possibly can, and means that we're not wasting time at the bottom, or wasting time on the descent, incurring additional decompression. You don't really want to be hanging around, so we're not. And once again, as we get deeper, you can see the watercolour is changing. It's gone this really deep dark blue, so there isn't necessarily particularly much light down here, but the visibility is great. And if you look in front of me there, you can start to see the first strobe. So we're not the first divers. In fact, I think we may even be the last divers in the water, but in front of us there is obviously a line of strobes, and we're going to add ours to the mix in a bit. For that, hopefully lots of you see my dive computer now. You can see that I've gone past 70 metres, or just past 70 metres, 3 minutes into the dive. Already I'm in mandatory decompression. My TTS, time to surface, is up to 9 minutes. My first stop is required, as you can see there, is meant to be at 7, 8. That's not actually correct. It would be 9 metres. This is a bit of a glitch, I think, in the way that the data is exported from the shearwater. But anyway, there we go. I've caught up with Rick. I've got my strobe on the line, and somewhere in front of us there is going to be a wreck. There you go. There's the wreck. And it's at this point I realise that I've come down onto Hull. And that's never a great sign, because if you're on Hull, chances are the wreck is either on its side or upside down. And really clearly, really soon, we're going to realise that this wreck is mainly upside down, which is not great, because frankly, nobody wants to do a dive where you spend the whole time looking at Hull. You want to do a dive where you are looking at interesting things. Now, that thing off to my left-hand side, the rounded thing, that's a boiler, probably the bottom of a boiler that's just poked up through the hull. So in places on this dive, you're going to see that the hull breaks open and you can see into it. But the important bit, the interesting bit of this wreck, majority of it is buried under things, and that's going to be really clear later on. And it's really disappointing, because we've come out 30 odd miles, 20 meters down. We're going to incur a lot of decompression for whatever we do down here, and it would be nice to know that there's a good chance of finding something interesting. But already on this dive, we're into kind of wishful thinking here, so we're kind of hoping that a bit of the wreck might not be upside down. We're hoping maybe some stuff has fallen off the side. That's the kind of game that you're in here. But hey, it is what it is. That's in front of me there. That's Steve Mortimer, who is kind of the leader of the Gasperados. This is all the Tampa stuff is done by the Gasperados. Steve's probably being the first person down. In fact, he would be the first person down. So he's swimming around, and in fact, he's probably getting towards the end of his dive, so he's probably heading back towards the shot line. Me, I am just trying to figure out what is going on down here. I'm trying to figure out where I am, just get some sort of bearing. So I've obviously seen the boilers back there. I guess, what I might be doing is looking for an engine, or maybe some sort of indication that there might be a bridge, or possibly, looking for a bow or something like this. Now, we know the wreck is 110 metres long, so that's going to be a big wreck. You can see there, I spotted a porthole, and I've just motioned to that diver there to say there's a porthole there. Now, that's great, because that is obviously part of the superstructure, so that's above the water, and therefore, it is a sign that possibly in this area there's going to be other things, maybe part of the bridge, maybe some bridge gear. In an ideal world, there'll be a bell. What there is something down there. You can see I've just spotted something non-ferrous. It's kind of a box. There's some sort of gears or something inside it, maybe. I don't know. You can see there, I'm just trying to get this out to have a look at it, see if maybe, something interesting on it. Obviously, all these wrecks are the same. The instant you touch anything, you just kick up the silt. And there you go. I found some sort of brass box and generated a whole load of silt. I don't know why I don't spend a bit more time looking at it. Maybe I think I'm going to go away and come back to it. And I think that's actually what I do on this dive. But I guess at this point, it's quite early in the dive. I'm still kind of hopeful that maybe somewhere around here is something a bit more obviously better than a brass box. But As you're going to see in a bit, there isn't really anything. Now, the one thing I do really kick myself about with this dive is that I didn't go to the stern. I don't know why I didn't go to the stern, but Rick did, and he took some absolutely belting photos of the prop. Now, you've seen one of those at the beginning of this video, but this is another one here, and it just looks really good, and I think also shows that the wreck is completely inverted at that point. So not much you can do about that, though. All you can do is hope that there's something off to the side, or there's a crack in the wreck or whatever. And this is what I'm doing here. Now, what I don't know at this moment in time is that I'm actually heading forward. I guess I should have known that because I landed on the boilers. I then went to that area where the porthole and that brass box was, and that is the kind of stuff you'd associate with superstructure, such as in and around the accommodation and the bridge area for a kind of classic 3-castle, 4-hold or 5-hold steamship. Anyway, this is me moving forward. Don't know what all this sort of stuff is here. Perhaps part of a mast. I don't know. That thing maybe to the right-hand side, maybe a bit of the mast. That certainly has that feel about it. Obviously, if that's forward and that's a forward mast is a potential area for a bell. But as you can also see, if there is a bell, I don't find it. And there will be a bell somewhere on the ship, but almost certainly it's underneath everything. And that's a pity because we're never going to identify it unless we find something like that. So many ships of this kind of size and era and design were lost in this part of the world that without those it's impossible. Without something like that, it's impossible to say the identity. Now what you can see here is hopefully you start to see all that chain. The chain is to do with the anchor. So this is the bow, really. There's not much else to tell it apart from the anchor chain and probably some anchors around somewhere, although I haven't seen any yet. Obviously the other thing you get at the bow is the bell, and where you'd normally get the bell, and sometimes you get things like locker rooms, lamp rooms with lamps and stuff in. So unfortunately all this is probably just buried underneath all the remains of the plate and the hull and all that kind of stuff. So this is really frustrating, this kind of experience. You've come out all this way, you've come down, and basically we know almost certainly we're not going to get anything for our troubles. So but you know what, part of this is what happens when you have a dive like this. So there's that anchor again. You can see the anchor there going into the hawse pipe there, and then somewhere underneath all of there is going to be the anchor and the capstan and all that kind of stuff. In fact, there's a pair of what could be mooring bollards there. Yeah, I think that's probably what those are there. So they've somehow managed to appear. Bits of the wreck have broken down, and those have kind of appeared. So wrecks degrade in all sorts of different ways, and it's not easy to understand how that happens. All you can do is just sometimes see the results like I've done there. So here I am just having a look around. Sometimes bells end up on seabeds, so that's what I'm kind of looking around for there. If you haven't seen my video of the stock force, then that's exactly what happened with the stock force. Stock force was inverted, and the bell somehow ended up about 5 or 10 meters away from the wreck, just lying on the seabed by itself, nothing else there. And that's why nobody found it for years and years until Fran had that great piece of fortune. So if you've not watched my stock force video, go and have a look at it. And it shows a triumph really of sometimes just going back and having another look, or spending the time to look in places that you might not think. So that bit off the side of the wreck, I always try and do that, and you probably see that in quite a lot of my videos. I often swim down the side of hulls. I swim sometimes just off bits of wreckage, just trying to find interesting things there. I think maybe it comes from the time when I was doing a lot of recreational diving. So near us in Plymouth, there are a couple of really popular wrecks. The James Egan Lane's a Liberty ship sitting upright in about 20 metres. The Scylla, purpose sunk. It was a Leander class frigate, decommissioned in the late 80s, and sunk us in 2002, 2003 for divers. Now, you swim off the side of both of those wrecks on a Monday or Tuesday, and you'll find all the stuff that people have dropped when they were diving them over the weekend. So I guess maybe that's part of the reason that I still go off the side of wrecks looking for stuff. But anyway, there you go. About the best I can do there. That's a bit of a fish doing a run. In fact, there's not that many fish on this wreck. I don't know why. A bit odd, but there isn't, compared to what we often get. Maybe it's the time of year. Maybe it's where it is. Who knows? But definitely not much. So this is me swimming along what would have been the port side of the wreck. The starboard side of the wreck was where I started, and that was where we saw some of the stuff like that brass box, for instance. I've clearly just decided that the starboard side of the wreck is the place to be. The port side if anything, it's kind of slightly lying on its starboard side. So I'm going over there. And as I come over the top of the wreck here, you can see that the wreck has started to crack open. This is quite a common thing. Once wrecks degrade enough, the hulls do tend to split and they break open. And if you have a look at my almond branch video, so the wreck I bought off Facebook Marketplace, that is a good example of a wreck where the hull has just completely cracked open, and stuff has been moved away really by the weather. So you can see a lot of the cargo in the stern area where the hull has gone. So this is me back over on the other side now, and you can see here, there's that mast. I think we saw that earlier on. You saw me having a little bit of a look at it, and once again, I'm coming back, maybe looking for the other bit of the mast. I can't see it there, so you can see where it's broken off. So there would be a bit of the mast somewhere else. It might be underneath it. It might have been pulled off by a trawler. It might just be somewhere off to my left-hand side. And this is me, once again, having a look in and around here. I don't know what these are, cleats maybe, or, mounts for lights or something like that. But maybe I'm kind of hoping that the bell might be there, but it isn't, as you can see. So, but always worth a look. One day I will do this and I will see a bell, but not today, unfortunately. So, as I say, back over on the starboard side of the wreck, and I'm now kind of starting to head back towards the stern, which is where the shot is. And if you think about the shot, it was in and around the boilers. So I guess the highest point of the wreck is probably where the boilers and the engine are, because those things will both hold the wreck up. Unless there's big cargo, the rest of the wreck will just slowly kind of crush down. The other bit of the wreck that's quite high actually is the prop and the rudder. And although I don't actually go there on this video, you've seen all of that on Rick's brilliant photos. So here I am. I'm heading back again, and obviously, after the mast, there will be a cargo hold, and then after that cargo hold, almost certainly is going to be the bridge area again. So that's probably what I'm coming back to here. And you've probably just seen there's another diver there. Oh, that looks like a porthole there, in a bit of plate, and you can see it's actually a bit of glass is in it, but the glass is smashed. So there's somehow during either the sinking process or the collapsing process, the glass has broken, perhaps even during whatever sunk the ship. And I think what I'm starting to get a feel for at this point is there is no wires on this ship. I haven't seen any at all, or maybe those might look like wires, but I think they're ropes. Or if there is any wires, there's a very, very limited number of them. So for me, this is a First World War era ship. There's another porthole there. And there's my brass box. Now, I'm really kind of frustrated myself. I should have spent more time looking at this brass box. I should have had a look and seen what was inside it, because there was that kind of gearing mechanism, which is quite interesting. I don't think I've seen a box like that before. Instead, I come over here and have a bit of a wiggle of that porthole, but that porthole is not moving. It is in there pretty solidly. So, brass box, porthole, and there was that other porthole, I think, just over to the left-hand side. But once again, I saw that at the beginning of the dive, and that's completely in plate, so isn't shifting. And here I am looking away from the wreck, once again hoping that something may have ended up over there. There may be bridge gear, for instance. Potentially there could be a bridge bell, could be a maker's plate, could be all sorts of stuff out here on the seabed. What there is, in fact, is a whole load of nothing, although that's a bit of coal, I guess. So there is a bit of coal, but there's nothing out here that looks particularly interesting, which is disappointing. So all about trying to identify the wreck. Maybe a bit of crockery would be nice. Who knows? Something just with a bit of a some writing on something where we can identify this wreck, but we're getting a whole load of nothing. Now, for those of you who are paying attention to my dive computer and the dive profile in the bottom and on the left-hand side, you can see there that my TTS is getting towards 80 minutes. My ceiling is 36 meters, so that's where my first stop is going to be. So, I'm 90 meters down. You can see along the bottom there, you can see the dive profile. You can see the little yellow dot showing where I am in the dive. And, already I'm into fairly serious amounts of decompression for not particularly much bottom time. And crucially, nothing really to show for my bottom time. I haven't found anything. There's no kind of eureka moments. Now, that happens sometimes. A bit more coal there, you probably saw it. So I guess one thing we can say is that there's sufficient amount of coal on this that that it was almost certainly a coal-powered ship. Not really a surprise. First World War, you're not getting. It'd be very, very unusual to get anything that's oil-fired. So, all kind of fairly consistent with the impression I'm getting. So, let's loads of ribs and stuff broken apart here. Somewhere in and around here there would be a galley. Somewhere in and around here there is going to be all the other facilities you need for a crew. That looks like a little coaming there for a hatch. Anyway, I thought this might be a useful opportunity to show another one of Rick's great photos. You can see the part of the hull that's starting to split open and one of the other divers going in to have a look around. I think it really captures how great the visibility was on this dive, but also how the wreck in parts is starting to degrade. That photo was a bit closer to the stern. I'm not entirely sure I got in there. I don't think I saw that gap. But this is me still looking around in and around the bridge area. You can see there that's clearly a boiler, and that has poked out of the wreck, and bits of the hull have collapsed, or maybe it's rolled out of the wreck. Boilers weren't actually screwed in. They were just they rested normally on kind of curved mounts, and that obviously has poked off that. There we go. Bit more superstructure, or in fact there you go, that's a porthole there, I think, that appears to have popped out of the wreck. So it's nice. It's got all the intact glass and everything. I think I'm just going to go down, have a look at it, turn it over, see what sort of porthole it is. I think this is probably one from accommodation, so it wouldn't have been in the hull. That's how come it's come out. Hull ones tend to be in really securely. There you go. That's probably been underwater 100 years, and it's pretty much the most interesting thing I've seen on the wreck so far. But yeah, good opportunity to have another look at one of Rick's photos, and there, that's taken underneath the hull, and I think shows once again how the hull is splitting open, and at some point it will open up the whole wreck and you'll be able to see more things. Unfortunately, all the really interesting stuff, I'm pretty certain, will still be underneath everything. So, not really an opportunity to see anything. As for me on the dive, you can see my TTS there is getting up towards, it's getting close to 2 hours. My first stop, 42 meters down. So, that's probably deeper than most recreational divers go. I've done 22 minutes. 90 meters, and I'm obviously starting to think about the end of my dive. Oh, there you go. I don't know if you saw there. I managed to get the rope on from my scooter slightly wrapped around the cylinder valve on one of my cylinders, but once again, just taking it off there and easy enough. I think if I'd have thought about it, what I should have done at this point is actually gone to the stern and gone and had a look at that epic prop. Obviously, I didn't know there was an epic prop, but it is a kind of sensible thing, especially when you've got a scooter, to get around the whole wreck and have a good look at everything. Because if you don't do that, then you end up missing out on something, like I have absolutely done on this dive. And it wasn't until later on the way back, Rick downloaded his photos from his camera to his phone and was showing us all of those. And I was like, wow, those are properly stunning. And slightly disappointed that it was James who appeared in that particularly epic photo, because obviously normally it's my role to light things up for Rick. So James kind of snuck in there and got the glory ahead of me. And perhaps this is the reason why I didn't do it, because where I am here at the moment, you can see that we can see there's Rick, and you can see there's the keel, and I think that's Rick just telling me that he's heading off, and it's me starting to think about what I do with my dive. And I think maybe because Rick is going, and because I know I've got pretty much 2 hours of deco to do, I think I probably decide that I'm not going to go much further away than the shot line, which is a pity because the stern is not far away from where I am now. But hey, there we go. It is what it is. And you kind of, I think the thing with all these kind of things is to evaluate your dive when you're on the surface. Think about what you would do differently next time and try and build those lessons into your next dive. Probably for me, the biggest lesson that I've learned in recent years is if you've got a bit of crockery and you think there's something written on it, always bring it up and then you can evaluate it on the surface. Often you can't see things underwater. There isn't enough light. Also, I need reading specs, so it can be difficult for me to see things. So that's a good lesson, and anybody who's watched my Nantes video will have seen the benefits from doing that, and the fact that we just identified a wreck with a bit of broken crockery, which was absolutely fantastic. But this dive, as you can see from the depth profile on the bottom, this is really, really close to being finished. I am pretty close to the shot line, and I'm going to, I think, probably look up in a minute and see it and head back up. So this is just one of those cracks. Underneath there probably is the engine somewhere. If you were able to get in there and swim around, you would almost certainly see the engine, because that's the reason it's been held up, is by the bulk and structure of the engine keeping it up. That might be a drive shaft there that I've just seen, so this crack might be going transverse, it might be going across the wreck, so potentially you could get in there. Clearly I'm at the end of my time. I've got 130 minutes TTS. You can see the strobes flashing away there, so for me the dive is over and I'm returning to the shot line. I'm going to pick up my strobe and then I'm going to get back to the surface. But once again, you can see the benefits of having great strobes. You can also see how fabulous the conditions on this dive are. There's another diver up there who's also heading back. There's my lovely double strobes that you've seen on so many of my dives. Working really well, guiding me home. And I think I'm probably the last diver left on this wreck. Rick, as you've already seen, he left a bit earlier than me. So once again, it's the important thing about having something to guide you back. Now, both those strobes are working. The visibility was actually really good, but there are circumstances in which that might not be the case. So having the double strobe is good. In fact, sorry, there is one other diver left. I think that's my friend Michael. In fact, he has just come down. So I remember exactly what happened on this dive. He had problems. Took him a while to get in. He came down and got on the wreck, and basically there was nobody else on the wreck but him. You probably saw there I had a fast ascent alarm on my computer. In fact, there you go again. And this is just a technique that I use. I get off the bottom really quickly. The pressure change proportionally at this depth is not that great. So I use a scooter to get myself up relatively quickly to about half the distance between the bottom on my first deco stop. Then I slow things down and I take it a bit more steadily from there. So I'm just telling the computer that I know there was a fast ascent there. So that is that's my dive pretty much complete. I know you guys all like looking at my deco profile. So this is the deco profile here. You've seen a lot of it through the video, but I just highlight 2 points on the ascent really. So you see me there leaving bottom with about 130 minutes TTS. Get up on the ascent. By the time I get to the first stop, that's down to about 120-ish. And then what I do is around about here, you can see me shifting from 1.3 to 1.5 PO2, which chops some time off. And then the other thing I do, which I don't know why I did this. I don't do this very often, but I then switch from trimix to air in my diluent. And obviously I do some dill flushes and all those kind of things. And that obviously chopped another about 15 minutes of deco off. And then what I do is at the end here, you can see my deco is cleared, but I actually stay down for quite a bit longer. And I think that's probably because I was feeling a bit embarrassed about the air switch. So don't do that anymore. Not really certain why I did it on this dive. Anyway, enough of my diving sins. This is what it looks like during the decompression. You can see there's a lazy shot there with the red buoy and all the DSMBs around it. There's 3 DSMBs, I think, that are off to the side. And that kind of separation is always an issue when you have people decompressing under DSMBs. Fortunately, the separation wasn't very much and everybody gets back on the boat okay. This is me, you can see swimming in. There's the back of the boat. There's Chris operating the lift. You can see what a fabulous day it is, especially when you consider how far offshore we are. So it was also a late day. This is us heading back into the glorious sunset there, as you can see. And although not the result we hoped, hey, you know what? Still a great day out. We all enjoyed ourselves. And yeah, I hope you have too. And I hope you will join me for another one of my videos. Thank you.